Hello! How are y'all doing? Good to see you all here. Good to see you back, Nick. How are you doing? Let me... Just a little bit. Hi, Kiraf. Hi, Vibu. Hope everyone's doing well. Had a pretty good day today. Spent most of it editing and recording. And I also realized that I was recording the entire time. And then I didn't tick on my microphone, so I had to record everything again. So that was fun. Oh my god. I feel like I'm back. I feel like I'm back on my training wheels, you know? Like I'm back at the start of like learning a new skill when it's like, oh, well, I forget like basic stuff now. Great. But hey, what we need to do. Hi Arts, hi Anchor. How are you both doing? Learning journey? Learning process? Yeah, exactly. Oh my god. So stupid. Because I was like, I was also playing around with the setup, right? Like as you can see, we got like a new camera angle since like a couple of days. I also have been playing around with the light placement as well. This is not how it looked during the recording, by the way. It looked a little bit different. But I was having fun with it. And then I was kind of like, cool, I'm going to take a little break and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to go, because I was recording everything in the same batch. And then I decided what I was hoping to come back to my PC and just start the editing process, right? Dragged in all my videos, started replaying, and I was like, wait, the audio tracks are empty. And I was just like, oh. So I opened OBS again and was like, oh, the microphone track is disabled. That was so painful. Oh well, live and learn. What do you use to edit and make 2D templates? What do you mean 2D templates? For the video editing? I'm really in the progress or like in the early stages of anything. So currently what I'm trying to do is I'm getting like a draft, like an editing draft in where I can see what kind of transitions I want, what kind of setup that I need. And then I'll start actually like making them. I do have some stuff lying around because there was a time where I used freelance services. I use freelance services for making transitions and all that stuff, right? So yeah, it is WIP. Yeah, WIP Wednesday. Is this chat saying anything else? Oh, it still says portfolio reviews. Oh, it's... That's weird. Let me change that. I don't know how that happened. Wait, what's the quickest way to do that, actually? Here we go. WIP Wednesday. Environment art feedback. Dunk. Thanks for bringing that up, Route 1. I don't know how long that takes to update, but okay. That's interesting. The thumbnail was correct, so I don't know what happened there. Yes. What was I talking about? So yeah, I'm currently like in the very early stages of all that stuff, right? So I do have some transitions and some sort of templates and like the very basic stuff, right? But yeah, that's exactly what I need to do like next. Maybe I'll dive into, I don't know what the free version of After Effects is, but something like that where I can make my own graphics. Maybe I'll do it in DaVinci Resolve. DaVinci Resolve has a bunch of tools as well, so maybe I'll dive into that. I've been doing some stuff in there, like what's it called, like Fusion templates, where you can set up your own stuff and make your own kind of transitions. I've been doing some of that stuff, but yeah, very early days. I'll need to explore that way more. Hi, Populous. We're just in the intro, so we're not really saying anything yet. I'm gonna see. Open the Discord as well. There you go. Today at 6. Today at 5. Yesterday. Okay, so this seems to be the order then. If we... Can I just switch that around instead of like undocking it, please? So annoying. Yes. Pillars. Okay, that's the order of today. But yeah, overall it's been going good. I'm having fun. Like, I'm really excited about this. Even though I know that it's going to be a lot of work and like there's a lot of investment already happening right now, I'm excited trying something new. Like, I'm loving it so far. But that's not why we're here. We are here for Work in Progress Wednesday. So let's have a look at some of the community art and see if we can give some feedback. First up, we have Roger Hamidis. Hello there. Since I consider I'm almost at the polishing phase, I decided to publish this project here in order to get a little bit of feedback from you guys. There's a crime happen. I'm struggling to get nice lighting, and I'm not sure if I place too many decals. Any feedback is more than welcome, not only the aspect I mentioned I'm struggling with. Okay, so we got lighting. So, okay, let's start with the lighting then, right? Let's have a look at that first. I think lighting in my opinion, or like, not in my opinion, like it should support like the storytelling, right? Because you mentioned that you have a storytelling going on, like a story going on where there has been a crime in a really old motel. So yeah, I feel like it's kind of doing a disservice that this is the place where a crime happened, but we can't see anything, right? Like, it's hard to see what actually happened here, and like the rest of it feels just like a really old, like grimy hotel, you know? So I wonder, I think it would be better if you can add lights to this section of the hallway as well, and then maybe remove the lights from here. And then playing with the intensity of the lights, where you pull focus to like a certain door instead of having like all the doors like evenly lit, right? So lighting should always kind of help help the focal point, and in this case it should help the storytelling as well, right? So think about it in that way. So support the story elements with lighting. And then, yeah, when it comes to the lighting itself, like it's very bare bones, right? There seems to be something weird going on with the lighting that's affecting the top as well. It feels almost way too intense, you know? Like you have, I think you might have like a fake light or something. Going on over here. So I would say like try to minimize that a little bit. I would make use of the fact that these lights don't cast like a wide range, you know? Like just have them affect like a small radius, and then have ones in the back as well next to the door. So have like a light here and have like a light here maybe. Same setup as you're doing here as well. And then instead of having one here, just have the ones where maybe. So we're gonna see, right? Because so this should be a focal point, as we discussed. But then you kind of want to highlight that that is not like the main, like the main reason, or like the main, not necessarily the main way. What I'm trying to say, like it's not necessarily like the path that you want people to take, right? Because this is a story where it's about like a murder that happened. And I'm only seeing now that there's like a guy here, right? Like a shadow. Like a shadow here, which is a pretty cool element. I just didn't notice it at first. But I would add like, I don't know, like more indications that like a murder happened here or has happened recently, right? Where you have like the police tape. Maybe it's like draped on the floor, but then someone cut it apart. And you can kind of use that as like a way to lead people into the scene a little bit more as well. Right? And then you can have like, I don't know, like adding some elements where you can, it's probably what this is supposed to be, right? Like footsteps. I would honestly like rotate them the other way and have them kind of like lead down a path that kind of leads you and points you towards a shadow, right? In like a very subtle way. Could be very, very interesting. Benno coming in, also just seeing the shadow. Yeah, I didn't notice it. Like I actually kind of like that, right? So I don't want to overemphasize that it's there. Maybe you could even turn down the light a bit more so that it becomes more subtle if we're then going to introduce some lighting here. Could be very cool, right? Like you can use the lighting in a way to like very subtly accent, like put accents to the things that you want to see. But I think the main thing here is like the combination of the lighting and the storytelling, right? Like how the two things work together in conjunction. Support, story elements. So that subtle shadow is actually nice. I like that. Nice. But yeah, I think definitely having some lights that point towards that direction, and then having something that indicates that this is like a recent crime scene, you know? Maybe It depends on what you want to do with it, right? But you could even have like, I don't know, like one of those cleaning things with like the mop still in it. From like a cleaning service. Or like not even a cleaning service, right? Like the local cleaning lady that's trying to get rid of like the blood stains like on the carpet or something like that. Right, but it could be cool so that you have like, hey, look, this is our room, and like, man, we're really at the wrong place at the end of this corridor, you know? Just really overemphasize and really sell it. You could you could even do like kind of over the top stuff, right? It kind of depends on what vibe you want to go for, but you could even have like a post-it on the note that says like sorry for the inconvenience or something like that, right? And this is like a note from, I'm imagining a note that comes from like the actual staff running the hotel, right? Where they're like, hey, look, we just had a murder, we're trying to clean it up, but we don't really have like all the financials to do like a proper cleaning, and we still need you to come in and give us money, right? Like, just like a little note that says like, oh, sorry for the inconvenience next door, or something like that. It depends on what you're going to go for, right? It can also be really tacky, if that's not your thing. But yeah. The main thing is emphasizing the storytelling, right? So put an extra emphasis on it. Oh, Zora, I didn't see your message. Hope you're all well. Yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you so much. Hope you're doing well too. And then the other thing is, I'm not sure if I placed too many decals. This is kind of a weird one because I feel like sometimes the decals are not the right ones that I would put there necessarily. Right, like what you want to emphasize, if this is like a really old hotel, and you have this like wallpaper, right? Like the biggest thing you can do is just have the wallpaper, like you have like a section where it kind of peels off the walls, right? And then maybe there's like a section that's kind of ripped off. And that's where you reveal like the plaster behind it. Right? But the key here is that you're trying to reinforce the shapes that are coming from the wallpaper itself. Like that would be awesome, because now you're adding like a lot of damage that's trying to indicate that the wallpaper is damaged, but it's not really cohesive to like the wallpaper itself, and it kind of just feels like generic damage, right? So trying to keep it in line with the wallpaper itself is going to be key here. And also, yeah, just like the damage really doesn't really fit, right? Like if we look at a section like this, like the damage is pretty generic. It's all about the details. Benno saying, what if the tape is brand new, but it's ripped so it conveys the story that the murderer came back and is now hiding from you around the corner? Or would that be too much? So that was kind of what I was going for as well, right? To a certain degree. I think it could have like multiple meanings. I think in that case, you let people make up whatever story they see in it. You don't necessarily have to put like a lot of stuff there to just have people's minds going crazy and then like thinking like, oh, it could, because in all fairness, you know, like we're making it really scary and the scene is set up to be pretty scary, right? But like, what if the person hiding behind the corner is just like the cleaning lady trying to clean up the carpet and she's just smoking the cigarette on like the emergency exit, right? Could also happen. But it's enough, right? Like, it's an indication to have like the brain juices flowing. But I definitely agree that you could have like the tape. The tape a bit more involved, I think, would be a good idea, because right now, especially because the light is not on there, right? Like, we're not really seeing much of the crime. So an indication of that happening would be awesome. But then let's go back to the decals, right? So with the decals, you wanna really just like emphasize like, or like, not with the decals in this case, right? Like, now we're talking more about the wallpaper, but you wanna emphasize that like the wallpaper is kind of like screwed up in ways just from like old age, right? And putting like all those details in. And then with the decals, you want to put like an extra emphasis on that, right? For example, you could use a decal here where you have a specific shape that matches the lines of the wallpaper, or maybe just cut it out, right? Like, have a decal. Let's say you just have like a very generic decal on like a square. And what you do for this one is just you cut off a piece of that square, right? So you make a cut and then you just use that section of the decal as like an actual mesh decal, so that you can line it up with the actual edge of the wallpaper. Because those little things, they really make or break a scene, right? Especially because the scene itself is very light on details. Like, there's not that much happening here. So you gotta make those walls like really interesting because they take up so much space, right? Same can potentially be applied to the roof as well. You could maybe pick out like a very old pattern or something like that that might help with making the roof more interesting to look into. But yeah. You were asking about the amount of decals, right? So I think on the wall, if you put them in better positions and you have them more in line with the wallpapers, I think the amount of them is actually pretty good. I think what I would do on the floor though is definitely add way more decals there, because there's not that much variation happening on the walls, on the floor compared to the walls, right? Whereas if you really think about it, like, what's gonna have the most wear and tear to it? It's gonna be the floor, right? Because that's where people walk on constantly. So having something there where you have like large dirt patches, well, like a bunch more stuff like on the floor, right? Because the floor feels clean in comparison. So doing something with that, like, way more, right? Obviously, you have to be careful, right? Because you're trying to balance like the carpet itself, the old carpet or the worn carpet, and then also the additional layer of like the footsteps on top of it, right? So make sure that those footprints that you're adding on top of it don't get lost. For example, what I'm thinking is that you could have like a very clean carpet, like next to stuff that's never gonna move or barely gonna move, and then the center corridor is like very worn carpet. And you can then kind of also use that in terms of like guidance as well, right? Where you have like the center of the corridor is going to be more worn and is going to lead you down the corridor as well at the same time. So it's kind of a benefit. Hi, Maddie. How are you doing? So yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say on it. Honestly, I think there is interesting stuff happening here, right? You're thinking about the story, which is awesome. I would definitely try to put more emphasis on it and try to visualize it, right? And put a little bit more focus on the story itself. And I think then we're in a really good position. So storytelling, more dirt on the carpet. More dirt on the carpet, more logical damage on the wallpaper as well. Cool. Thanks, Roger. I hope that helps. I'll put the overpaint in your little thread on the WIP channel. Thank you so much for sharing your work. Straight moving on to Populous. It's a small update from Populous this time around, so I don't think I'll be talking about it too much. Let's have a look though. I changed the plaster material since I wanted to embrace the whole stone feel in the scene. This is talking about like the tower that we can see on the left. I want to go in and vertex paint with some stone material, add some geo here and there to make it pop. Yep, sounds good. Also, I'm going to change out the roof shingle for actually sculpted ones. What do you think about the change? Wait, the change on the material? Because I mean, I gotta be honest, like it looks lighter, right? And I like the way that your thought process is. It's just a little bit different. But yeah, I don't think it's bad at all. And then on the right we can see a little bit of a vertex test. Yeah, the material. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, like I didn't really see that much of a difference, right? Like the color is a little bit different and it has a bit more defined like stone feel to it now. But you gotta watch out for the scale of it though. Like the scale that we're seeing here, right? As I'm going through this, I'm noticing this. This feels like too large. So this entire tower is probably gonna have to tile more. And make sure you keep texel density into account. Focus on that. Yeah, but then this is going in the right direction. I like what I'm seeing here. I think the thing that you're gonna have to do is you're gonna have to apply the same vertex paint onto those stones as well, right? But I'm assuming that that's like a work in progress thing. And I would also potentially think about like how you apply this, right? Or like where you paint it in. I would probably think about like a more natural way of having it like down here instead of it coming from the top, right? Because we're still talking about like sand or something like that. Well, is it sand? Let me check your update again. Plaster and bricks. Oh, okay. So, okay, the reason why it felt like sand to me is because the blending. I think if you want to have like plaster, you're probably don't really have the proper amount of vertices for vertex paint. No, you do. You can get away with like a ridiculously low amount of vertices. The only thing that you have to do then is you need a height map for the blending. So, like, for this, let's say for this, right? Like, you can get away with, like, I don't know, something like this even. That face is literally just a cube. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're gonna need like a little bit more than that, right? Like it can't just be like the edges. You'll need like a little bit more here for sure. Definitely. Because what you want to do is you kind of want to have like vertices that you can paint on in the middle, right? And then using a height map to increase the blending as well. And I would look at trying different height maps that give you like a blend that looks more like plaster, because now it looks more like sand on stone, which doesn't really work if you have like a vertical surface, right? UVs are a bit messed up on the tower since I overcomplicated it for the last version of the material. Oh, okay. Fair enough. I mean, that tower, like, the only thing you need is you need to put a seam on the back end of it and then just auto unwrap it and then scale it up. Scale it up to match your textile density. It's really simple for like a tower like this, especially if you're gonna work. Like, the only thing that you need to keep in mind is that it will probably do like an unwrap, something like this, right? The only thing you need to do is just quadrify the whole thing so that the tiling of it is not gonna like skew at a certain point. But that's the main thing you need to do. Tower UV, boom. So yeah, making sure that you don't have any skewing going on, and make sure that you have like a straight, like a quadrified mesh, right? Like a quadrified UVs. And then applying the tiling on that, it's gonna give you like a nice result. I was thinking of using the plaster only on those flat textures, not the brick models themselves. Oh, okay. You will have to think about what you're gonna put here though, because I mean, look, you can add sand here, right, if you wanted to, but then you'll have to put it in like at a lower opacity. Because the sand, having sand there to me doesn't really make much sense, right? For the stuff that I mentioned before. But you had a couple of questions about the roof shingle, so feel free to ask those as well. While I finish the post. Not on my computer right now. I don't have access to most of the models, so I can't really add little topology to make further explaining a bit better. Yep, that's what we discussed. If you can please search Wizard Tower on our station. Oh man, that's gonna give me a lot of results though. Are we talking about the concept from Mick Junt? This one. Let me see. I mean, you can barely see it from a distance. Let me see. The post here. Oh my god. Okay. I'm gonna do something different. Let me just snip this out. We need the roof. I'm gonna put that in here. So you are wondering how he's doing the tiles here, right? So usually when we're looking at stuff like this, first thing I'll do is look at the edges. And it's quite hard to tell on this one, but we can see that on this tower section on the left, right? Oh. There is geo here. So I'm assuming that this whole tower might be geo. But it is very thin though. Like that's what I'm surprised by. They're not as chunky as you would normally expect them to be. Right, and I also think, I don't know, it's quite hard to tell that you can kind of see below it. So what that tells me is that what this is highly likely to be is that this is a tileable. What was the person's name that we're looking at here? Mick Junt. So Mick probably took a tileable, unwrapped it onto this object. So then did a UV pass on it, and then did a displacement pass on it to actually make it into geometry. And then optionally, what you can do is do a decimate on it as well to make it more optimized if you wanted to. But that's optional, depending on how you go about it with the displacement. There's actually, if you have the Environment Artist Handbook, since you're a member of our community, then there is a page on this, how to make roofs. I outline how I make roofs exactly in this method. But it's literally that. So first you grab a tileable, then you unwrap it onto the object as you normally would have it. And then you just do a displacement based on your UVs. And that is going to give you, well, sorry, there's a step in between. You need more polys, right? So you do like a subdivision. So yeah, you would do a tileable, do an unwrap, then add more polygons with a subdivision modifier, then do a displacement based on your UVs and use the height map of the tiles that you have. And then optionally, you can decimate it to make it more optimized again. And that's sort of the workflow here. But I'm really surprised that it is so shallow though. Because there was a moment. Is that okay for games? So it depends, right? Because there are ways to optimize this if you wanted to. What you can do, and this is more commonly done in games, right? Because this is a personal project, so I can bet you that Nick didn't care about optimizations like all the way through. Nothing wrong with that, right? It's personal work anyway. What you can do is have individual tiles, right? Or have tiles that you have cut out and just sprinkle them on top of the thing, and then still have I would say even on like some of the edges, right? If you add like individual tiles on the silhouette, which is always going to be the most important thing, you just scatter a couple there, and then the rest of it is parallax occlusion mapping, which is going to simulate the depth. That could also be a viable way, because I was thinking that that was Nick's approach here, because you can see Geo here, but then I couldn't really see Geo here as clearly as I was expecting to. So there was a part of me that was like, maybe Nick used Geo for these guys, right? And then Pom for this guy. Maybe. That could also be a way to do it. But yeah, is it okay to do for games? So one of the things that you could do is you could have like your LODs, right? You put your LOD 0 where you have like all the tiles that are like displaced and you have a lot of geometry. But then as soon as you go away for a little bit, like in LOD 1, you just make it the flat tileable again, maybe POM, right? So you would switch them out. So we switch from Geo to, let's say, just a tileable. Maybe it doesn't even need POM at that point anymore. Because if we optimize from this to this, we're just cutting out Geo and it can still have the same material on it, right? Yeah, that was in reference to the tower itself. Yeah, but I think it's highly likely that he used this method over here. Yeah, and that would be a way to optimize it then. Like switching from Geo to tileable on like the first LOD. You basically have like a really detailed LOD, and then as soon as you get out of range where you can see like the pop in the silhouette, you can then just cut it all out. So this can be a viable way for games. It just depends, right? Like if you get close to the roofs like all the time. Yeah. Yeah, this doesn't look too bad though. I think what you just need to do when in your case, right? If you look at your roof, is you just need to like make the shape like really bulky or like really swooshy, right? Like have like a nice curve to it. Kind of like Nick is doing as well, right? Like the whole thing has kind of like this nice mushroom shape and then these like swooshing window corners that come out of it. Like it's a very pleasing shape to look at. Also, I'm gonna guarantee you that Nick purposely put like a lot of moss and grass on the junctions where this roof and this roof's meet, because that's gonna cause UV seams. So that's why that grass is there. And the bonus is that it looks pretty. Yeah. I'm gonna add that there. It's an interesting thing. Grass cover seams. Thank you so much for the tips. No worries. Happy to help. Yeah, because this would definitely cause some UV seams. It's not too bad here, right? Because this transition to this is going to be smooth. It's just when these tiles hit these tiles, like that's where you're gonna see like a transition between the two. But hey, just cover it up with grass. Works well. And it looks awesome. So why not? Cool. Thank you so much, Populous. I think that was kind of it for this week, right? But let me read the last thing. Making some rocks. Or something else, but couldn't focus much on the scene itself. I have a lot planned out this week, so expect bigger updates next week. That's awesome. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to next week's update then. Thank you so much for the tips. No worries. Keep it up. Next up, we have Vibhu. Let me look at the Discord. I'm planning to change up the story a bit. It's a vintage mansion property that now serves as a hotel. All the doors in the courtyards are rooms, and the guests have gathered on the property for an Indian wedding or engagement that takes place in the courtyard. Okay, so the center courtyard is going to be like full of festivities then. So there's probably going to be like... It's probably going to be really busy then, right? So we're walking away from something that's really soothing and like very easy on the eyes to something that's probably going to be like really busy. It's an interesting choice. And let's see. In the courtyard, I would love your advice on the following. How do I break the hotel into different biomes or places of interest? How do I break the hotel into different biomes or places of interest? I don't think biomes is the word that you use, because biomes means like different natural environments, right? So you go from like a tundra biome to like a forest biome or something like that. I don't think that's what you mean by that, right? So I think what you mean is, how do you add different points of interest, right? Like I don't know, like cool little places where you could do like a little bit of storytelling. Honestly, there's a lot of opportunity here. It just depends on what kind of story you want to tell, right? So let's write that down to start out with. So POIs, like points of interest, they depend on the storytelling. Like, who's getting married? Right? Like, maybe there's a special person that gets married. Who is attending? Is there like a specific thing that they celebrate that is quite uncommon for other Indian weddings, for example? Or very traditional stuff, right? Like traditional stuff that's almost been lost to society at this point. There's some really cool stuff that you can do with this, right? And you can really infuse it with whatever you want. It just depends on what you want to do it. And then I would pick like... I would pick... Okay, I would not actually start out with like a bunch of different places where you can add like a bunch of stuff. I would focus on getting all the things in place to get this looking like a wedding venue, right? Because the reason why I say that is because I think it might be really busy to the point where like additional points of interest, like they're not really gonna matter in the grand scheme of things, right? Because all the attention is gonna go to the middle. That's what I'm thinking right now, right? Like if you want to keep it like very muted and like very minimalistic, then you could add like different points of interest and have like camera setups that kind of show it all off, right? But I think focus on the main focal point first. Like, get that blocked out. Right? With all the props that you need, and then start thinking about the additional points of interest. That's the way that I would approach it. DPK is saying the center staircase looks too prominent. Yeah, it kind of does. It's because now there's like this big streak of light that comes in, right? And it's adding like a lot of attention to this spot here. So yeah, it's definitely, you're definitely right. It's taking a lot of attention to itself. But that's also, especially with Lumen, it doesn't detract from your good point, DPK. It's definitely right? Like, just want to explain that in Lumen, if you work with like really light colors, like it's gonna scatter the light around like crazy. So as soon as you might start to notice that as soon as you change the colors of the walls, like this focal point is gonna probably diminish like by a lot. I'm going for an engagement vibe with the center circle stage with the hero Italian, Indian musical props, which match to take in the ambience. Yeah, so that's awesome, right? But all, like, I don't know. I'm currently envisioning, like, I mean, I love this idea, right? I love that it's so specific and so culturally significant, and I love all that stuff about it. But I'm also imagining that it's going to be really busy as well. So I would say block that out first, see how much attention it's going to attract to itself, and then see if you can add some other stuff on the sides as well. Because let's be honest, like if you don't have those additional things on the side, no one's really gonna care if you still have the main thing, right? So yeah, main thing first, and then see if you can find opportunities for some of the other stuff as well. So yeah, block it out and then explore. Explore other options. Because you gotta keep into account, like, this is gonna get pretty big, right? So I would honestly stick to the core of what's necessary. Like, there's another way of saying this, like focusing on the minimal viable product, right? That's like a common term in business. I call it the MVE, which is like the minimum viable environment. I would really focus on the core story that you want to say or want to convey, and then only then start thinking about like the other stuff that you can add onto it. And I would even see them as optional. Because if you have to choose which one to sacrifice, you're probably going to sacrifice like the random stuff that's happening on the side compared to like the main thing that's going to happen in the middle of the scene. Hi Igor, hello. Have you noticed some laggy or bug using brushes inside of Affinity Photo? Cheers from Brazil. No, not really. I don't use it enough for that, I think. I just use it for these overpaints. Welcome from Brazil. So yeah, Vibhu. That's how I would approach like the POIs, like as you're talking about them. Then the next point is, how can I make the second floor look and feel different? I mean, it's already different enough, no? Like we have like a different details, and like you're probably gonna have like some really nice stuff on the railings as well. So I don't think you don't have to push it too far. I think it's already good enough in my opinion. Because yeah, I think you also want to watch out for, like, again, I know that I keep rambling on about this, right? But like how busy everything is gonna get. I think these sort of scenes are kind of nice when they don't have a lot of stuff that's like really busy. Because now we have shelves, we have picture frames, we have chairs, we have windows, we have these hanging ventilators. I don't know the name of them. Like, there's already a lot of stuff happening, but what actually is going to be more important, and that's something that I think we talked about last week, is that you think about like how to make clusters of objects. So instead of scattering everything everywhere, like make interesting clusters of objects. Have these benches with like the shelves, and then make this clear, right? Like, don't have anything here, so that you have something to look at and then there's nothing to look at. Because it's only the contrast of having nothing and then something to look at is going to make the stuff that you want to look at more important. You know what I mean? Like, you always want to have some areas that are like lower in density compared to high density sections. And the second floor props I meant, without going with too many assets. Don't keep reusing these props. I would not even think about making different props for the second floor. Also, because again, the interesting stuff is gonna happen here, right? Like, this is where the interesting stuff is gonna happen, and then the secondary stuff is gonna happen to the sides. So wait, let me see. So gonna change this up a little bit, right? For the notes. Yeah, so this area, for example, right? I would put like a lot of detail here. And then remove all of this, or like, not maybe remove all of this. And just have like a nice looking wall texture, right? And that's going to push your attention to this little area where you can maybe do like a little bit of storytelling, right? Where you can have like, I think we talked about this last time, where you can have like little drinks. Maybe people are celebrating the wedding, right? Maybe there's little plates as well. Do something with that, and then let the rest of the scene be kind of empty so that you're pulled towards the stuff that is more detailed. And then do something here, right? Like, have something in the back that kind of fills it up a little bit, but you don't want to go too far. And then what I wanted to say with this is that, so this is the main focal point, right? So this is going to be your number one thing you want to focus on. Then I think you're going to have like the sides that are going to pull like a lot of the attention. So that's going to be where people are going to be looking next. I would not even worry about the second floor at this point, and honestly just make it almost like a replica of the first floor. Just shuffle around like the configurations, right, of everything. Make different stories. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe dress it up with like a different rug or something like that, right? Like, I would, for the set dressing of the second floor, where's the second floor? I would, oh, it says here in the name. Thank you so much for doing that, Vipu. If only I paid attention. So yeah, the second floor, what I would do is look at the assets from floor 1. And see if you can do some quick wins. For example, I'll give a stupid example, right? Like a rug. Like if you happen to have a rug, like having rugs here, like just give them a different texture. it doesn't have to be much, in my opinion, right? Like to make it look different, you only need to tweak like a couple of things and it can look completely different. So that's the way that I would approach it. And you're gonna find like a lot of these quick wins for sure. Just have to keep an eye out for them, right? As they pop along. How do I make it feel more hotel-like? That's a very good question, and I'm gonna leave that to you. With the main thing is looking at references. Like, there must be places like this that have been converted to hotels, right? And if not, you're gonna have to combine some of it yourself. But the main thing there would be references. Because I'll be honest, like I don't have enough specific knowledge on like the sort of architectural styles and like the cultural influences to really go in depth on that, right? Or to make like an accurate judgment call. So that's probably better if I leave it in your hands, honestly. And then your last question is, do the scale of and feel of my props feel good? Yeah, I like what I'm seeing now, for sure. I think, yeah, no, like from all the assets that I'm seeing here, like all the stuff here looks really nice. This all feels good. You're throwing in like a lot of characters, which is awesome because you're constantly verifying the scale. That's good to see. Yeah. Don't really see anything that bad, honestly. Again, this is where your references come in, right? But yeah, especially the props, they feel really good. I would say maybe, I mean, this is going from my gut, right? So I don't know if this is accurate, but I feel like the ceiling is too high. Because this is like a pretty tall ceiling, right? Like let's say this is 2 meters. That's like 4 meter high for like a first floor ceiling. It's pretty tall. I don't know. But again, this comes down to reference, right? But that's what my gut is telling me. I feel pretty good about like the first floor. That's looking real nice. Also, because the first floor currently looks more fleshed out, right? Like it has more details into it and it's more refined. So of course it's gonna look better. Yeah. Real nice shots. I would say I'll give you a challenge. I don't know if this is a challenge that Rishab has already proposed to you, but I'll give you a challenge of picking 3, maybe 4 screenshots or like camera angles that you're going to be working with. And that's the challenge that I would give you. Like if you had to pick out of this entire collection, which ones would you do? We don't have to do that here now, right? But that's a good exercise to know in the future if you have to scope down. That's going to be very important. Because I'll say it now, right? Like I'm very inclined to maybe not even do the upper floor. Like the upper floor to me feels something so easy to cut at this point without you losing like a lot of time, because all the interest is going to be on the bottom floor or on the exterior of the first floor, right? So like the stuff that you put in, like the ceiling stuff is definitely going to be, it's going to be important. The railings are going to be important, and then maybe some stuff that you put on the ceiling itself, that's going to be important. But I don't think you need to go through the trouble of like set dressing the entire thing unless you have made like the rest of the scene and still want to do it, right? It feels like a stretch goal to me, not as like an initial goal that you should have for yourself. That's how I would approach it, right? But yeah, honestly, I like what I'm seeing here, you know? Like, I think the props are coming out nice. I think what we talked about is definitely gonna be important, right? Like the clustering of the assets, like trying to build clusters of like interesting things instead of having everything everywhere. That's gonna be really helpful. And then just like putting in the block out for like all the main components, right? Because that's only like what we've done now is we've kind of speculated about a bunch of stuff, right? I speculate that once you start building your focal point and like the center of the scene, like you don't need to go crazy with the exterior of the scene on the bottom floor. But that's speculation, right? Because the focal point might also be something that's very minimalistic, and then you might have to do more dressing up. So again, like you're doing at this point, put in the blockouts and just see from there, like take it in steps. Yeah, great stuff, Ibu. I do really mean it. Like I'm enjoying what I'm seeing. It's very structured. It's very logical. I like what I'm seeing so far. So keep it up. Before we move on, DPK said the ceiling color changed to dark maybe? Yeah, I think definitely the colors would be something to play around with. I do agree. But it also depends on the reference again, right? Because I don't think that most of the colors here are representable yet. I don't know, might be wrong. But yeah, you can easily play around with that for sure. I also don't really mind that they're like this very light greenish color, because what it will do is it's gonna bounce the light around like really nice, right? So yeah, pros and cons to that. And no worries, Ibu. Thank you so much, and keep up the great work. Awesome. And then last on the list we have Mishla. Mishla is saying, here's my weekly update. I applied the feedback from the last time and focused on trim sheet planning and creation. I decided to split two trim sheets in decided to split trim sheets into two parts. One will be all the storefronts. I think of making a second variation for this one is necessary. And the other ones for all the windows. For all the windows. Oh, yeah, like all the smaller windows as well, because I was focusing on the bigger ones, right? Started modeling my focal point store. I wanted to ask general feedback about modeling with trim sheets. Am I approaching it right? Should there be more or less geometry? I'm not sure if the asset I have is good enough quality. Oh, the reference. I didn't grab the reference. So let me snip one of those guys. Let's see. Oh, it's on there as well. Cool. Hello, Mishla. Okay, let me plonk that in here. And then I am gonna put that in an awkward place right here. This is awesome. It's awesome that you added reference, because that gives me like a good idea. I never said this, right? But sometimes I feel quite lost when there's no reference, or I feel quite what is it? Like ill prepared, or I don't feel like I'm fully convinced about what I'm saying, right? Because you never know what crazy reference people are working with. So this is awesome. So cool. So first question is, oh, brush. First question is, am I approaching it right? Should there be more or less geometry? I'm not sure if the assets have good enough quality. So let's see. So you have a couple of the detail trims, which are quite nice. And then you have some of the bigger ones. And the bottom trim as well. I think most of the components are in there, right? As we can kind of see here. What you could do is, if you're worried about like not having enough detail, it's kind of hard to tell, right? Because some of the light is definitely overexposed at this point. Just having a look. I think the main point is you gotta watch for these transitions, right? Where you probably have the big bevel up top, and then it goes straight down, small bevel, and then it goes to like this massive, or like this big overhang, right? Which is quite interesting, where you don't really have that, right? So it kind of diffuses the silhouette a little bit, where in this case it's quite a pronounced silhouette, right? Also watch out with how round some stuff is, because that might give the impression that it is I don't know what to say, like less real. I know it's kind of a confusing word, right? Because I know that this is meant to be kind of stylized. It has like a very artistic look to it. So less real doesn't really make sense, but I hope you know what I mean. I'll send detailed screenshots in the chat if that helps. Yes. I see what you mean. Some of the stuff could definitely use some more geo. I'll give some easy examples, right? Because right now, the main thing that you need to worry about is the actual silhouette of things, because that's always the thing that's going to stick out most, right? So having a thing like this, if you zoom really in, if you just have a thing like this, you can make that way more interesting by probably doing something more like this instead, right? Where you have like a little lip. This little lip comes up, this goes down here, that goes into like a little lip. That comes up again. And then that goes up again like that. What I'm always trying to do, right? I'll explain my sort of thinking why I'm doing this. Is I'm trying to see if there are opportunities within the trim sheet that you've created where I can add a little bit of geometry without destroying the trim sheet itself, right? So I just did this really quick exercise where it's like you can make this feel like really detailed, and what I mainly was looking at was just the stuff that you already added into it, right? And then also being inspired by some of the stuff here, right? You can kind of see it, like it has like a little lip here, and then it kind of goes into the trim, and then it has a little lip that goes up, that sort of stuff, right? I mean, I'm working with pixels here now. Yes, exactly the point. Yes, that's a great one, Mishla. You're not replacing the trim sheet, it's enhancing it and following it, 100%. So that's the most important thing about trim sheets, right? Because you've done it correctly, right? There's nothing wrong with the thing that you've done at this point. But you can make so many easy wins if you just add like a little bit more geometry and you follow the texture like you're setting it up. So exactly right. Also, it's not only about like the main geometry itself, right? It's also about these little details that you had on top of it. Like having this little rain pipe, right? That's such an awesome detail. That's such an awesome detail. It would be a shame to not implement that. And yeah, you can do the same thing on the frame as well, right? So let's have a look at your frame. Yeah, this has like a little bit more detail, right? Don't know. Yeah, let me get some of those latest pictures in as well. So if we get this guy in here. Right, again, especially if we're following the silhouette, right? Like a lot of easy wins that we can do. A lot of quick stuff. Where you just follow this and then you have like a little bit of a bump. And this would literally be like a triangle, right? So if we were to zoom in on this, it would be like a little triangle that kind of comes out of it. You don't need to make it like rounded or anything like that. And then yeah, maybe push this out. Have a little bump here as well. Right, and then have that come out more, and then push this inwards a little bit. Usually it's about like the small stuff, right? Yeah, I'm sure you know what I mean by now. So yeah, don't be afraid to add a little bit more geometry, right? Geometry has become really cheap, even without using nanite, right? So you can definitely add like a bit more to it, for sure. Feel free to do that. Let me see if there's like other cool opportunities. I think honestly this is the best example, right? And it's basically just looking for like opportunities, right? Also looking at some of these frames. I don't know if you were gonna see it, right? You can build some of this stuff in as well, right? I mean, it's kind of tricky to see. But if we watch the frame here, like the frame actually works something like this, right? Where imagine that this is the whole frame. Like they're actually like separate bits. So you can either do that with a trim, or if you don't have the trim, then you can just add like a little bit of geo and just push that further back, right? Just to indicate that there's like a split between the two varied like bits of wood. And then you can have something like this underneath as well, right? Which is basically just like a transition from like a slanted thing to a straight one. I mean, again, we're working with pixels here, but yeah. I'm sure that you can find like lots of opportunities, you know, to add some of this stuff. You got some really good ref here as well, right? So just look at this gap. That gap is interesting. You have like this thing that comes out pretty far and then goes further back in again. Right, like the actual silhouette is pretty interesting of an object like this. Hi, Rory! Yeah, that's exactly the kind of stuff I wasn't sure of. When I had the first look of the model, I was like, I can just model everything very easily. Why should I use a trim sheet? Yeah. It's actually the combination of the two that makes it really interesting, right? Because then you don't need to model in everything. You can sort of pick and choose what is going to be trim sheet and what is not, right? So let's say if you have like very tiny detail, you could potentially leave that to a trim sheet. But yeah, some of the bigger chunks, you can definitely like emphasize that with geometry. And there's really interesting things that you can do, right? Like, for example, I'll give an example here, right? Like you intended this to be like one trim, right? So this was supposed to be like one big trim that you could just like wrap stuff around, right? But I'm also seeing the opportunity of having like a small trim and like a medium trim, right? So this could be like a very tiny edge. I mean, I know that you have some stuff here to cover that as well, right? But you can kind of approach that in that way as well. Where, oh man, what are some other opportunities? Yeah, I mean, you could do the same thing here, right? For example, if you cut this up, right, and you retain the center part, but then you replace the two outer parts with something like this, right? Like the trim that has like more details on it. You can just swap that out and make this whole trim look way more ornamental all of a sudden because it has those like little buttons added to it as well. So look at it like it's a kit that you're playing with, right? Like you can cut up and like combine and like cut up sections like into UVs and like maybe duplicate UVs, right? Like you can do all kinds of like weird stuff. There's like, oh man, there's like some very elaborate thing that there's some very elaborate things that you can do with this, right? Where you could look at potential opportunities. Let's see if this works out. Trying to see. I don't know how this is going to work, right? But you could basically have this and then flip it. So this would be like a cut in your geometry. And then on the opposite side, and you just flip it. And then you have like this nice ornamental pattern that goes into like the other direction. And it's mirrored now. And it kind of becomes like this headstone, right? So you would have this as like the main frame. And then the trim could still continue underneath it, but you could scale this one up to make it more of an emphasis piece, right? You could make it like the corner piece or something like that. Yeah, you can definitely play around with this and like cut it up and like really play around with how you cut things up, right? Because yeah, if we're going into it, right? Like I'm not saying that you should change this, right? But like for the next trim sheet, these kind of patterns are not really that valuable because you can break them up into smaller pieces. For example, you could have something that just has this. Right? If you only have this section of the pattern, you could also just make it into a corner because this corner just means that you're cutting up like the geo in this way, and then you just map it to go like all the way around itself. See what I mean? Like the thing, like it's one continuous pattern. Right, so it's, I mean, I know that this is very tricky to see, right? It's also Like it's like a whole new world is opening in front of you. Because I remember the first time when I made a trim sheet, I was like, cool. I just added it onto the building, and I was like, yeah, guess I'm done. You know, I didn't look at like all these opportunities. But yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do with it. Because to a certain degree, like, yeah, you could potentially make this shape with this trim. Potentially, right? But yeah, anyway, that's the way that I would approach it, right? Like, really think creatively, like really try to back it with details where necessary, right? And also keep in mind that your geometry and the way that you're shading it has an impact on it as well, right? So what I would do, I don't know if you're using this at the moment, but look into weighted normals. Because weighted normals is gonna give you a way where you can get away from like everything looking very roundish and very blobby. Like it's kind of unclear. I don't think you're using it, but I might be wrong. Kind of feels like this is very round still. But that's gonna help a little bit as well. Hi Rory, it's the first time I've seen this format. Are you evaluating, recommending a subscriber environment? Yeah, so this is like a format that I do every Wednesday, where I go through people inside of our community and they can post up their work to have me review it. So yeah, kind of going through like community members' work. It's a lot of fun. I am using them. I kinda did it intuitively. So glad to hear that that's the intended workflow. That's awesome. Yeah, that's great stuff. Yeah, cool. But yeah, I mean, you got good ref here, right? Just focus in on the details. Also, another tip is, so we kind of talked about like weighted normals here, right? Like a second random tip is don't make anything straight. What I mean by that is that now it kind of has that 3D-ish look, right? Because everything is kind of straight on. But you can really infuse like a lot of character by just like moving ever so slightly moving stuff, right? Where you have like a really good example here where you can see that this pipe is not flush with the wall. It's kind of offset and kind of at an angle. And the same happens here, right? Like, I mean, you can barely see it, but this is not like a straight piece of geo. It has like a little bend in it, and the same for the roof as well. And it adds a lot of character to it. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say there. Let's have a look at some of the other questions, right? So you also had questions about the possible techniques for adding localized dirt. I know I can make unique max per asset as well as vertex blending with a global tile dirt. I was wondering what technique you would use and what are the advantages of them. So that's a good question. I actually made a video on, oh god, using vertex colors. I say oh god because I don't think I've actually published that yet. Don't know if I did. Let me quickly check. I have that video where I kind of go through like the pros and cons of that technique. So I might as well share it, right? Let me see. Oh, it's taking a long time to load. Jesus. Where is it? Yeah, so here we go. Let me quickly share that. So this is a video that I made on how to set up vertex colors in Unreal, right? And kind of I go through the whole process and also talk about the pros and cons. However, I want to go back to what you asked me last week. If there is ever an opportunity to figure out a tool, like this would be it. Because one of the downsides, and I don't think I actually spoke about it that much, is vertex color is dependent on vertices, right? So what the main drawback to that is that when you add LODs to it, it's going to be dependent on those LODs vertices as well, right? So usually what's going to happen if you rely on vertex color is that it's going to break down the vertex color that you added because you're using LODs at a certain point. You just have to. So that is the main drawback of using that technique compared to masks, right? Because masks, they're not dependent on like the geometry. They're just a texture. Obviously, the downside is that you have to go through like the laborious process of setting up like an RGB mask for every single asset that you make if you have a lot of them. See where I'm going? A perfect tool. Like you could make a tool for that where you automate that part of the pipeline, where you just say like, hey, look, a bunch of generators inside of Substance Designer, for example, or Substance Painter, whatever you're more comfortable with. And then a script where it automatically pulls in the asset, bakes it down, and then just uses like, sets up like four different, what is it, like user textures that it then use to store like the RGBA mask, right? And those masks can be based on like, I don't know, just like a very generic looking mask that you can then tweak if you want. But already doing all that work would be awesome and is actually pretty relevant to what's happening in the industry today. Because I can guarantee you a lot of studios have switched or will switch to like some kind of mid-poly workflow. So yeah, that would be like very relevant. And that's probably going to get a lot of people looking at your work. Yeah, obviously if it works really well, right? Like as seamless as possible. Yeah, that would be a very interesting tool, 100%. And it's a real pipeline use case, would be amazing to show. 100%. 100%. Talking about that, there is a shader breakdown of the last Dead Space that someone shared in our Discord a while ago. I think it might be like an inspiration in resources. Let me just have a really quick browse. Dead Space remake environment shaders. There we go. You know what? I'm just gonna tag you in it, Michelle. There you go. I just tagged you in it. Oh well. Yeah, I should share it for other people too, right? Like sharing is caring. Never mind. Ah, that's the wrong one. No. Okay, there we go. That's the correct one, so everyone can have a look. Those are shaders for like the Dead Space remake, right? Like this is kind of how like their shader system works and how they set it up. Very interesting to look at. But yeah, back to the topic at hand. Let's have a look here. You've gotten advice that since I'm really going for optimization and stuff, I should avoid unique masks because I use a mask for every single asset. What's the difference between this and unique textures optimizations wise? Oh, so yeah. Well, that is one of the main concerns that I had, right? Which is why I moved away from using masks and moved into vertex color. Because A, it's way quicker, And B, I don't have to make a material instance that is basically just me like plugging in like a different RGBA mask to handle like the dirt and all that stuff on top of it. I just found it like really cumbersome to work with. But if you want to do optimizations, right? Like the main thing you can do with mask textures is that you can make them like really low quality, because you're just looking for the transition between black and white pixels, and then you can blend that with like a set of generic masks that you have already loaded in the engine, for example. So that's a way, right? Like you could have like an asset that's pretty big with a mask texture that has 128 pixels, 256 pixels, like very low stuff, right? So that you're going for optimization, and then use that to then again blend with pretty generic masks, like just tileable masks in the engine again. That could be a way to optimize it, right? And that's actually like a use case that's been used in the industry as well. But yeah, let me read that again. Let's see if I missed anything there, right? Like if I'm going for optimization and stuff, I should avoid using unique masks, because if I use a mask for every single asset, yeah, what's the difference between this and unique textures? Yeah, that's the way it has been done, and I've worked with that workflow as well, and that works really well. So that would be my guarantee. I think the thing that I'm doing in my personal work is a little bit more. It's a little bit more experimental, right? Because I'm very conscious of the limitations of Vertex Color, but I don't know how far I can push that. And from the stuff that I've seen with the lots that I've tested, like it kind of works, right? But it's definitely gonna break down at a certain point. Yeah, that would be a great tool to make, right? Like if you're looking at it from the artist perspective, like what would be awesome for me. And I say that this tool is awesome because I was actually thinking about making this tool. I was looking into how to set up batch baking in Substance Designer, for example, because I had the whole tool set up. It would just bake it in Substance Designer. It would then load in like a bunch of generated maps, right? And then spit out like an RGB texture that already had like all the mask data already in it. But I think why didn't I do it? Like I think it was because for two reasons. One, I didn't really want to take a bunch of time in writing Python and all that stuff, because that was the point that I was getting to, right? Like to set up like batch processing and all that kind of stuff, you probably need to dive into Python. Didn't want to do that. And then also, secondly, it doesn't really get rid of the overhead that you're still introducing on like the material instance side, because you still need to set up a material instance for basically every asset, right? Unless you're packing assets together on the same sheet, then you can do the same thing on the mask side as well. But yeah, that was my main thought process there. But there's ways around it, right? Like I'm pretty sure that you can do the whole pipeline. Yeah, I think you could do it. You could do it that way as well, for sure. That's a great idea. Yeah, like automating the material pipeline as well. Damn, what was I thinking about? I forgot what it's called, but I think what I was really interested in, or what I was stumbling upon was there is a way where you can override specific things in material instances without making a new material instance. So I think it's called something with asset data, like unique asset data or something like that. I found that in like a talk on on like 35 interesting things you can do with Unreal or something like that. So there is a way where you can, no, not even in a blueprint. Like it's separate from the blueprint entirely. Like it's, how did it work again? So you would, instead of making it an instance in your material, right? You would normally make like, oh, I make it a parameter and then I make an instance and then I can control the parameter. What this would do is you would make it like a user data, and then you could change that based on the individual asset that it's attached onto. So it actually becomes like per asset that you're overriding a material or like a parameter instead of per instance. But it still would have like all the benefits of the instancing because you're only overriding like one element of the whole thing. So it still would benefit from like the material instancing system, but it would also enable you to then override like a single parameter of the whole thing. So you're basically getting the best of both worlds. Let me see if I can find the link to it. Man, I don't know how I'm gonna find this though. Is it this one? Reload acid, water buoyancy, texture baking, geometry script. Shadow switch. Console variables plugin. I'm just kind of looking through. Fix pivot tool. Nah, it must have been a different one. I'll see if I can find it. I will see if I can find it because it was a talk that was pretty recent though. Because that's from 2022. Nah, never mind. I'm probably going to find it. So I'm probably going to drop that in the inspirations channel as well. But yeah, it's very cool. Like you can change it on like a per asset basis instead of per instance. And you can see the link, right? Because I was like, if I can then use that to drive the mask, then I don't need to make a material instance whenever I want to plug in a new mask, but I can just do that on like an asset basis. And you could probably then also automate that, right? Because if you're selecting an asset and then you're generating all this stuff and you're setting up like new user data, there must be a way to override that too, right? So you can probably automate that. Yeah, I'll make sure to share the link because that's just like a general good talk to share. And I'll also share this one as well because I mean, if you're into Unreal, like this talk, like I learned so much from this. Even though it's not relevant to the topic that we were talking about, I think, as far as I could read in like a quick glance. No?
It's up.
It's not it. Never mind. Named reroutes. Yeah, this is from a while back. Cool. Yes, so, I mean, sure, give it a watch. Thanks a lot. No worries. Yeah, this stuff is awesome. This is from, let me get his name right. If it's actually in there. Oh yeah, from Chris Murphy. What's his Twitter tag again? Like he does a lot of cool stuff on Twitter where he shares like a bunch of really interesting things that are like a perfect blend between art and technicality. I'm sure that if you search like Chris Murphy on Twitter, you're probably gonna find him. I'll share his name as well. Yeah, definitely interesting guy to follow, interesting to watch. You can learn a lot from them, especially if you're on like the technical artist path, right? He's basically doing the same stuff that I would be interested in if I was more technical. Cool. So let's see, was that it? I think so, right? Let's have a look at Brooklyn Street. Yep. Okay, cool. Thank you so much, Mishla. I hope this all helped. I'll make sure to look up the talk that I was mentioning before, because that's going to be really relevant if you're going to make a tool like this. And yeah, good luck going forward. There's a couple of new people here. Welcome. Anand is saying hello. Hello, Anand. How are you? And then Ricardo is saying, hi, I opened the live not long ago. I don't know if you talked about it, but can I ask you, what do you do when a UV doesn't fit in the UDIM? I know it repeats when you get out of borders, but is that game ready? Oh, you're talking about if it doesn't fit within like the 0 to 1 space. It depends by how much. If there's a couple of things, right? If you have to keep that in mind, like if the texture space, if UVs are like really too big, you have to go up a texture size. If the differences are small, like I would look at the least important thing on your asset and try to scale that down to hopefully give you enough space to kind of fit it all in there. Or, I mean, last resort could also be to just scale everything down just by a little, depending on how much you fit and how much you want to fit in there and how much your textile density is as well. That's also important. So yeah, that would be my things that I would add to that. Thanks for the feedback. It was great. No worries. Thank you so much for the good questions and bringing all this stuff up as well. All right. And I think with that, we're not running over. So I'm gonna take that as a good sign, and I'm gonna keep working on some of my video edits. So I'm gonna be bouncing. Thank you so much for being here on this WIP Wednesday. If not, I'll see you on Friday for one of my art live streams, or you can just pop in next week and join me for another WIP Wednesday and get some of our lovely community's people's work reviewed. So thanks all for being here. Go check out beyondextent.com, and yeah, stay creative. Talk to you later. Bye.